So, gentlemen, I think we're headed into a new bull market for uranium. The cycle has begun to turn. Prices are off their bottom of $17 a pound, reached in November. We've had some clear catalyst occur in the production cuts announced by the Kazakhs and by Cameco at McArthur River. And I think that has been an impetus for not only a rise in the spot price, but also a bit of a jump in the equity prices, especially of juniors. So before we get into some of that stuff I talked about, the macro side, can you have just a 2-minute introduction of yourself and the elevator pitch for your company, please, starting with Richard here on my right?
Hi, I'm Richard Spencer, the CEO of U3O8 Corp. Our projects in South America, we have 2 preliminary economic assessments. The principal project is a uranium-vanadium project in Argentina, and our cash cost there would be in the order of $16 a pound, and we're concentrating, the next steps are to actually lower that cash cost. So basically, uranium-vanadium project.
But you have a bit more than that. I'm going to follow up with each of you before you go down. You have something else. You have a permit in for a mill or a licensed mill. Is that not correct? No. That's it. Oh, sorry, I'm one off. So you have the Vanadium project. You said you want to talk about Vanadium for a little bit. Can you explain just real quick why the Vanadium is important and why it occurs with the uranium?
Well, our particular deposit has uranium and vanadium in the same mineral, and so if you're extracting the uranium, you extract the vanadium as well. And in fact, the ratio is that there's about 2 parts of vanadium for each part of uranium. So the deposit would produce twice as much vanadium as it does uranium. And the vanadium market has been pretty interesting. We've seen supply diminishing over the last 5 to 7 years. The vanadium market has been in a long bear market, a 10-year bear market, and demand actually exceeded supply last year for the first time, and finally the price has started to react. The price has doubled, tripled over the last year or so, and what's driving that are some new rebar rules in China. You add basically 2 pounds of vanadium to rebar, to steel, and you double its strength and you increase its flexibility to make it more earthquake resistant. But the other thing that's driving vanadium is the battery market. By 2020, about a quarter of the vanadium demand is going to be from the battery side. There's a lithium-ion battery that has vanadium in it, but the main driver is an industrial-scale battery that's called a vanadium redox battery. Now, this is a bit of a Cinderella in that it's not anything that you're ever going to see driving your cell phone or anything. These are big industrial-scale batteries, and that's driving vanadium demand as well.
George, Western Uranium, you have a permit in for a mill. You have a sales contract with a utility, as I understand it, and clearly some uranium assets. Can you tell us about Western?
Maybe we should call our company not Western Uranium, but Western Vanadium. In some of our mines, we've got 6 times the content of vanadium that we do uranium. We're all in the United States in an old producing area. We've got 7 mines that are permitted, mines that have operated as recently as 2009 by Denison, and you all probably know Denison. We are a near-term producer. When the price of uranium recovers a little bit, and as Richard said, the vanadium price has gone up substantially. We're almost to the point where we are at the point where the vanadium content in our complex is worth more than uranium. But the only difference is you can do a long-term contract for uranium, but not yet for vanadium. I had a call just this morning with an Indian company that wants to buy vanadium, but they've always bought it almost like copper. It's a commodity, and you can't start a mine based on $11 vanadium. It's been up and down. It's been as low as a couple dollars in the last 10 years and as high as $15. But I think Richard's right. I think the demand for vanadium is going to be there, and it's going to be, for the companies that have both uranium and vanadium, be a real plus. We also have the rights to the only permitted but unbuilt uranium mill in the United States. Right now there's only one uranium mill in the United States, and that's owned by a company that I formed in 2006 called Energy Fuels. It's the only fully operational mill in the United States. So to produce more uranium and vanadium, you need to build more mills, and that's what we have. It cost, Energy Fuels sold me this mill a couple of years ago. Cost them $13 million to get the permit for this mill. It's not easy to get a permit in the U.S. Now, I don't know about South America, but in the U.S., mills are going to be at a real premium, and having the right to build that mill when the time is right is the key.
And can you give me just 1 minute on the ablation technology?
Well, the other thing that we acquired from an Australian company a few years ago, a new technology that reduces the cost of the production of uranium from sandstone type of deposits. And all of our deposits are sandstone hosted. I can give you more details on that. It's a process that uses kinetic energy and no chemicals. So basically it's good for the environment, but it reduces substantially the cost of producing from these type of mines.
Peter, you have a bit different model. You're a prospect generator, as they like to call it. Can you tell us about Canalaska and what you're doing here in the Athabasca Basin?
Yes, Canalaska's been very active in the Athabasca Basin since 2004. We have generated 25 uranium projects. We're currently holding 7 of those. And we've got Cameco Corporation with a new discovery, and they started drilling just last week on that. The last 14 years have been really interesting. We knew that in the Athabasca there were these very, very high grade, very, very rich uranium deposits. Typical uranium deposit around the world will be somewhere between 10 and 20 million pounds of uranium at 0.1% uranium. In the Athabasca, we're seeing not 10 or 20 million pound deposits, we're seeing 200 and 400 million pound deposits, and we're not seeing 0.1% uranium, we're seeing 19 to 25% uranium. Now, the potential for making money on these very high-grade deposits is very evident to a lot of people. Uranium is in tremendous demand in the future for nuclear power plants. We have currently about 400 nuclear power plants that are operational, but there are 650 nuclear power plants on the drawing board, and we didn't have enough uranium for them 10 years ago, so the market went crazy. The market went from $7 a pound to $140 a pound. That uranium comes out of these mines in the Athabasca or as byproducts in Australia. We figured we could find another uranium mine like that, and Mitsubishi Corporation helped us, Korean Electric Power, Korean Resources Corporation helped us, and right now we're sitting on a brand new discovery about 12 kilometers away from the world's largest, richest uranium mine. We have high-grade intercepts at the unconformity. Cameco have now gone on to the second phase of their drilling. They're drilling 6,000 meters of holes in January, February, March. They believe they're chasing a Tier 1 discovery, and a Tier 1 discovery to us is in excess of 200 million pounds. What does that mean? Well, look at NextGen. NextGen's gone from a $25 million company to a $1.2 billion company on 200 million pounds of uranium. That's our game. We're explorers. We're chasing the big high-grade deposits. We've got multiple properties. We've also got other projects that, if you go to our website, you'll see what they are. The next 90 days are going to be quite amazing for us. Thank you.
So you got the project with Cameco that you're drilling. Can you give us just maybe a timeline of catalyst, what the next 6 months look like as far as results?
The results we put out in September give us 5-meter intercepts, 1.5% uranium with up to 4 or 5% uranium. They're drilling 75 meters behind those 2 intercepts right now. First drill hole should be finished early February. There will be 6 or 8 other drill holes after that, so through February, March. We will have to announce high-grade assays as they come in, as counts per second. We did that in about 3 days after our last discovery. I think we have 90 days of anticipation, but we could start giving people very good results as early as the first week of February. Our share price is 35 cents. We're at $1.50, so I think there's lots of room to move. We've got a 27 million share company. The next 90 days is your answer.
Gentlemen, I think we should tell the investors what they want to know. I gave a talk about this earlier, and then the question is the bottom in for uranium? I'd like each of your thoughts, starting here.
Always I'm going to say yes, but in this particular case, I think that it is. I mean, we've seen a bunch of false starts in the uranium industry because people see as Peter mentioned, this huge build in reactors that are planned and going on. There's 60 under construction around the world today. And people tend to focus a little bit on the number of reactors that are being taken offline as well, without realizing that the ones that are coming offline are small, isolated, single unit reactors, whereas the ones that are being built are typically anywhere between sort of 3 and 5 times the size of those, and they tend to be clustered. So the economies of scale are there for the big reactors, and they're not there for the old isolated reactors. But I think that the absolute catalyst for our industry was when the 2 biggest producers say they're not prepared to produce it at the current prices. Cameco and particularly Kazakhstan. I mean, Kazakhstan has absolutely ignored the uranium market ever since they started producing 10, 15 years ago. They've been they didn't care about the market because their production cost was low enough. So a country that has never worried about the uranium market, for them to come out and cut production, I think is the most eloquent message that there is out there, that the producers are not making money at these prices, and there is still a bit of an overhang in the market, but that's going to disappear pretty quickly. I mean, Cameco has said that it would prefer to buy uranium on the spot market rather than mine its own uranium and sell it into its contract. So I think the bottom is in.
George, do we go back below $20 a pound uranium, or is it up from here?
No, I don't think it's going to go back below 20. I don't know if we're going to recover, to 40, 50, or $60 this year. It's going to take a while. The big key to this, of course, is, as Richard said, is the cutback by the major producers. But the utilities, especially in the U.S., need to get on board. In fact, you can't buy uranium in a long-term contract for $25. It's not there. So when the U.S. utilities, which are the ones that are substantially uncovered in the 2001, 2002, and beyond, when they come back to the market, the price is going to go up. When they come back, I don't know, and I can't tell you, but that's going to be the catalyst, cut of production, but also the demand by these utilities for contracts. Long-term contracts will drive the spot price as well as the long-term price.
Peter?
I think we've seen a change with Cameco saying they're going to buy back some uranium. Their last quarter, they were at $38 a pound to produce uranium. They'd been doing it at $31 a pound before that, and $18 a pound before that. So I think there's some activity that's going to happen in the market with Cameco. I don't know how or when, but they could easily buy it up to their average price of $31. What I really see is going to be the catalyst is when those hedge funds say, you know what, if you change the price of uranium from $40 to $140 a pound, it only makes 0.4 of a cent per kilowatt hour change in the price of electricity. So why don't we guys get in there and start buying? And if the private entities, the banks, the hedge funds get in there, it's going to be amazing. The demand is there, and if any of you need to know more about uranium, what's going on, this book came out in September last year. It is an amazing book. It gives you the numbers, it gives you why. But I know that there will be growth in nuclear power because it's the only viable alternative to give us clean air. That's really what the story is. We're going to have clean air. China's worked it out. India's worked it out. We're going to have to work it out. I looked in Dallas the other day and the place was full of smog. You cannot keep burning hydrocarbons. There will be more demand for nuclear power, and we've seen that change happening. People's perception is changing, and this book is capable of changing every one of your perceptions. I've read it. I think it's amazing.
I think you had something to add here.
I just wanted to add to Peter's point. I mean, he talks about the air pollution, but the equally dramatic problem that's out there that we just can't see is the water pollution. The underground water pollution and the underground aquifers in China are dramatically contaminated. Same thing going on in India. At the moment, we've got Cape Town in South Africa being the first modern city that's run out of water, and they could have put in a desalination plant linked to their nuclear plant a couple of years ago, and the politicians decided not to do it. But nuclear power works best, the reactors work best when they're going flat out. And what the Chinese are doing is, particularly the Chinese, but the Middle East is starting to look at reactors in this sense as well. They're linking desalination plants or water purification plants to the nuclear reactors, so that during the evening when the demand for electric power falls off, that excess power automatically goes across to cleaning the water, be it desalinizing the water or just purifying the water. And then the water is a whole lot easier and cheaper to store than the actual electricity is. So we're seeing that symbiosis between nuclear and water purification, which is equally important as the air purification.
I need 1 minute answers, starting with George in the middle. It's not all rainbows and puppies, clearly, for the uranium sector right now. What are the biggest challenges it faces? What keeps you up at night? What could hamper a straight-up recovery from here?
Well, nothing keeps me up at night, but again, if we had another situation like Fukushima,
Sure.
That's the biggest risk to the industry. There's, like Peter said, there's over 400 reactors operating. A major disaster somewhere in the world that would shut down a number of those reactors would be a real challenge. Obviously, we need the demand, and it comes only from reactors. Uranium today is not used commercially for anything else other than reactors, so that's the biggest risk I see there, which I think is fairly small. Even Japan is bringing back reactors. They shut them all down, but they're slowly coming back. They realize they need the nuclear power.
5 back online, 18 have applied. Peter?
Well, I tell you what, if you want to drive a Tesla that's 300 horsepower plugged into a 20 horsepower house, you're not going to have the electricity unless you stay with nuclear power. I don't know what's going to slow it down. There may be some accident, there may be something that's strange, but I know that there's been a lot of safeguards put together to stop those old plants having problems down the road, and these new nuclear power plants that are coming through are extremely safe. There are 250 different types of nuclear reactor you can run. There's some very safe ones, lots of small ones coming out there. We've changed the way the world looks at power. We've seen that solar and wind can do a lot, but not enough. So I don't see a lot of holdback because there's no alternative to that. If we don't go to nuclear power, we're going to smog ourselves to death.
And Richard?
I think that George is absolutely right. We can't be talking about a clean world which is driving the next generation, be talking about driving electric cars and all this kind of thing. This change is upon us. This change is going to happen quicker than any of us expect. And so everyone's excited about the battery metals and energy storage and all the rest of it, but no one is really talking fundamentally about where all that energy is going to come from for the Teslas. And the wind power is there, the sun is there, great initiatives, but you need that base load power that keeps running while all the hurricanes and everything else hits, and that is nuclear power. And we've learned, fortunately, a hang of a lot since Fukushima, and these plants are a lot safer. Thanks.
If there's anything you ever wanted to know about nuclear power or the uranium business, now is the time to ask. You have 3 experts up here. We have 2 minutes for questions. The cash balance, the treasury of each company.
Canalaska is sitting with $660,000 at the moment, and we've got $12.5 million being spent by Cameco Corporation on one of our 9 properties.
And share structure, Peter?
27 million shares.
Western Uranium has about 20 million shares, trading both in the U.S. and Canada. Doesn't have a lot of cash. Our cash burn is very low. We're not exploring and we're not producing mines. We've got $300,000-400,000 in cash. Low burn rate until we start the mines.
U308 Corp's got about 30 million shares out. Cash is low. Cash is about 150,000. However, our main shareholder has backstopped us, and he is putting in $1 million to do the next key work, 0 interest rate.
Did I see a question here? No. Any other questions?
The book that I recommend is by Ambassador Thomas Graham and Scott Montgomery. It's Seeing the Light, the Case for Nuclear Power in the 21st Century. It's right up to date till last September, even talking about Mr. Trump's thoughts. But this is an amazing book because any question you ever have about nuclear, right from Madame Curie right through to Trump, is here.
Any other questions? Here. Do you think the Germans are going to regret not being nuclear? I'd say they haven't gone as fast as they said they were going to go. They still have reactors operating. They say they're going to be operating until 2022. So we'll see.
But Germany going back to burning all that brown coal, I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're talking about all the solar and wind that they're producing. They're burning all this. We have got to learn to stop burning things for fuel. And the Germans are demonstrating why we've got to do it. Their CO2 production has gone through the roof.
Last one.
Did Hillary's selling of the uranium
Uranium-1.
have any impact? He sold it to Russia. What impact will that have on the uranium market?
I'll answer it. I think that the United States needs 50 million pounds of uranium annually. They only produce less than 2 million pounds. It's a mistake to sell that supply to the Russians. I mean, 40% already comes from Kazakhstan, and then much more comes from, not much more, other production comes from, Uzbekistan, Russia. And I think, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, everybody was complaining about the U.S. being 60% reliant on foreign oil, and now they're 96% reliant on uranium. I think that issue has to come to the fore. We got to cut off questions. Remind them your company's name, and if you have a booth, tell them where it is.
U308 Corp, booth 208.
Western Uranium Corp.
And Canalaska's booth's just down here at 304. Come by and I'll give you some more details on this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, gentlemen.